Lesson 61, cacheSignal. 1. Introduction. In this lesson we are going to understand what cacheSignal is, why it exists, and how it fits into React server components. cacheSignal is a mechanism designed to let us know when the lifetime of a cached render is finished. In practical terms, it gives us a way to react to the moment when React decides that a server render is done, aborted, or failed, and therefore any associated work should stop. It is important to emphasize from the start that cacheSignal is currently designed only for React server components. It is not meant for client components today, even though it may expand to them in the future. 2. React server components context. React server components introduce a rendering model where work can be cached and reused across requests. Because of this, some operations may continue running even when their results are no longer needed. For example, a data fetch might still be in progress even though React has already finished rendering or decided to abort the render. cacheSignal exists to solve this problem by providing a signal that represents the lifetime of the render's cache. 3. What cacheSignal provides. When cacheSignal is called during rendering on the server, it gives back an abort signal. That signal is automatically aborted by React when the render lifecycle ends. A render is considered finished when React successfully completes rendering, when the render is aborted, or when the render fails due to an error. If cacheSignal is called outside of rendering, it returns null. This makes it explicit that there is no long-lived cached scope associated with that execution. 4. Core idea. The key idea to communicate here is that cacheSignal is tied to rendering, not to components in general. It represents the lifetime of the cached render, not the lifetime of a request, a function, or a piece of data. Anything that depends on the render being alive can listen to this signal and stop working as soon as React is done. 5. Usage. Canceling in-flight requests. One of the main use cases of cacheSignal is canceling ongoing work that is no longer needed. For example, if a data request is still in progress but React finishes rendering early, continuing that work wastes resources. By associating in-flight requests with the signal provided by cacheSignal, React can automatically cancel them at the right time. This leads to more efficient server rendering, better resource usage, and cleaner handling of concurrent work. 6. Important pitfall. A critical rule to understand is that cacheSignal only works for work that starts during rendering. If asynchronous work begins outside the rendering phase, cacheSignal cannot cancel it. This is a common mistake, starting a request in a shared scope and then awaiting it inside a component. In that case, the signal will not behave as expected, and the work will continue even after rendering has finished. 7. Usage. Ignoring errors after rendering finishes. Another important use case is error handling. Sometimes an error happens not because something truly went wrong, but because work was cancelled. For example, a database connection may close when rendering is done. By checking whether the signal has been aborted, you can distinguish between real errors and cancellations. This allows you to ignore or suppress logging for expected cancellations, while still reporting genuine problems. This leads to cleaner logs and more meaningful error reporting. 8. Parameters. cacheSignal does not accept any parameters. Its behavior depends entirely on whether it is called during rendering and on the lifecycle of the current render. 9. Return value. When called during rendering on the server, cacheSignal returns an abort signal. When called outside rendering, or in environments where it is not supported, it returns null. This makes it safe to check and reason about in shared logic. 10. Caveats and future considerations. Currently, cacheSignal only works with React server components. In client components, it always returns null today. However, this may change in the future when client-side cache lifetimes and invalidation become more explicit. Because of this, you should not assume that it will always be null on the client forever. The safest mental model is to treat cacheSignal as a rendering lifetime signal, available whenever React can reason about the lifetime of cached work. 11. Summary. To summarize, cacheSignal gives us visibility into when React's cached render is no longer valid. It allows us to cancel unnecessary work, handle cancellations gracefully, and align asynchronous operations with React's rendering lifecycle. When used correctly, it helps build more efficient, resilient server-rendered applications.